Welcome back to the Ben Mulroney Show. Thank you so much for joining us. All right, we are going to end this show in style with two of my favorite guests because it's the Monday edition of This Week in Politics. Please welcome the lead columnist for Canada's National Observer, Max Fawcett, and the former Director of Communications for Prime Minister Stephen Harper, Dimitri Soudas. Max, Dimitri, happy Monday to the both of you.
Good morning.
All right, let's keep going with the drama. Some will say a distraction from the budget. Others call it internal palace intrigue of in the Conservative Party of the Chris d'Entremont defection. He is sort of, I think, continued with his with doubling down on his reasons for leaving, saying the Conservatives were more like a frat house than a political party. And Max, I'm not a member of the party. I haven't been a member of a party since 1993, as a matter of fact, if anyone cares. But you and I are certainly not members of the party. So before we go to somebody who is, what is your assessment of something like that?
Yeah, I don't think it's a good look for the Conservative Party of Canada right now. I think their reaction kind of proved Chris d'Entremont's point. And I just want to do a little compare and contrast here. So this is what Prime Minister Justin Trudeau said when Leona Allslev crossed the floor in 2018. He said, "I wish her the best in her new choices. You know, that's something that happens from time to time in politics. It's not great, but it's also not the end all and be all." And here is the official statement from the Conservative Party of Canada. Chris d'Entremont, who established himself as a liar after willfully deceiving his voters, friends, and colleagues because he was upset he didn't get his coveted deputy speaker role, is now spinning more lies after crossing the floor. He will fit in perfectly in the Liberal caucus. The contrast there is just so striking. There are two approaches to politics here, and Poilievre's party has clearly chosen the latter one, and I think we are seeing how it is going to work out for him. If there are other people who are considering crossing the floor, I don't think this is going to discourage them. I think it will have the opposite effect.
Dimitri Soudas, is it as binary as Max makes it, that it's either you choose the magnanimous, we wish them well in their new choices, or we burn them out, we burn them on the way out? How do you see it?
Ben, you characterize things as a binary option between drama and distraction. I would say it's both. Drama created by the Conservative leadership team, and distraction created as well by the Conservative leadership team. They've created drama where somebody wanted to change caucus. In this case, it was Mr. d'Entremont, and quite possibly and realistically Mr. Généreux, who ultimately chose to just walk away and say, I don't need any of this. I will go back to one of the most famous floor crossings in the last 20 years, Belinda Stronach,
yep,
who ran for the leadership of the new Conservative Party of Canada, and chose to cross the floor to the Liberals. I remember very clearly back then, opposition leader Stephen Harper basically asking me to convey one very simple message back to her and to her team. Don't let the door hit you on the way out,
yep,
and we will see you on the hustings, i.e. we will run a hard campaign against you, and the voters will ultimately choose. We are now into almost one full week of the government tabling a budget that apparently was going to bring about generational change, was going to be inspirational. They used every synonym in the book. The budget comes nowhere near being any of that, yet we're not talking about it as the number one topic on our list. So,
and Dimitri,
right
that's something I want to bring up. So the consensus is that this is a self-inflicted wound, that perhaps had cooler heads prevailed and had people had perhaps a longer view of this, they would have taken a different tactic. They would have put water in their wine, and they would have acted a little more diplomatically towards their outgoing colleagues. So if we can agree that that is something that makes sense, can we also not agree that, there's a lot of members of the press who have focused on this internal drama when they had this perfectly valid, federal budget, first one we hadn't seen in 18 years. And they would rather focus on the Conservatives as opposed to the budget. It feels to me like this is also something that has been amplified by a lot of members of the press that chose to focus on the drama as opposed to the substance of the budget.
Why aren't we talking about the budget?
Yeah, I mean, you're right. We're not talking about it right now. Good point. Yeah, good point.
I mean, look, journalists are pretty predictable on this sort of stuff. If it bleeds, it leads, right?
Yeah.
And so on the one hand, you have a complex policy document that I agree with Dimitri. It didn't live up to the billing that it was given by the finance minister, by the prime minister, but that takes a distant sort of second chair to this car crash that is unfolding in front of Parliament. With the leader of the opposition and one member crossing, another member might cross, then he doesn't. Like, how can you turn away from that? And the way to deal with that, if you were the official opposition, is to say, look, we wish Mr. D'Entremont the best. What we want to talk about is the budget.
Yeah.
And they didn't do that.
No, you're right.
They amplified the focus.
I will add.
Yeah, go ahead.
And I will add two things. Not that the Ottawa Press Gallery is a beast, but the expression I often used to use is "don't feed the beast."
Yeah.
And what they did in this case is they kept feeding the beast.
Yeah.
Scripting questions for caucus members, forcing them to get up in the House of Commons and ask questions so they can be on the record as opposing the Liberals, which would prevent them from ever crossing the floor. And on the budget, Ben, its day will come.
Yeah.
Because right now it's just a book. It's pages with black ink. This government will actually have to implement this budget, and the economy will have to respond to whatever this budget is supposed to do. Rule number one, don't feed the damn beast.
I think my dad used to say, don't give them anything to punch at.
And all they did was give things to punch at in this case. But the bigger picture in all of this, forget about, the inside bubble, Ottawa, rumor mill. What message is this sending to Canadians? Does this look to you like His Majesty's loyal opposition as a government in waiting, or something that is in total chaos and disarray?
Okay, so let's stick with this until the end of this segment. We don't have a lot of time left, but if you, Max, had just a couple of words of advice, free advice that you would give the Tories on how to turn the page over the next week, what would that advice be?
The first piece would be replace your leader with someone who conduct himself like a grunt.
Short of cutting the head off the beast, in order for them to get past this, is what I'm saying, in the next week, what would you say?
Find new voices in your caucus who can bring the tone that you want, or you should want, to the public. So, less Andrew Scheer and more, serious, sober-minded people who can actually just keep the waters a little calmer.
Is that a good piece of advice, Dimitri? Honestly, there's a lot of voices within the Conservative caucus that don't get a lot of amplification. They don't get a lot of time on the national spotlight. Maybe now is the time to find those new, perhaps diamonds in the rough or young up-and-comers and accelerate their path towards the front bench.
It's not always only exclusively young up-and-comers. It's also some seasoned veterans, like, for example, Larry Brock. It's somebody like Adam Chambers, who was actually on CBC and gave a very reasonable answer when he was asked about D'Entremont leaving caucus. If I had to offer, as a total has-been, two pieces of advice is, number one, stop acting like caricatures, and number two, get out of the echo chamber.
Yeah. Yeah, it's I don't know that anybody outside of Ottawa cared about this until it became a thing that we then all had to pay attention to. So those are good pieces of advice. Guys, don't go anywhere. When we come back, there are a couple of things I want to talk about. We've got Mark Carney saying a pipeline is going to happen. We heard that the next tranche of those projects of national importance are going to be announced before or during Grey Cup weekend, which is imminent. So we could be seeing those very soon. Meanwhile, Chris, David Eby and the BC Indigenous leaders are saying a pipeline will never happen. So the question I have is, what happens when an immovable object hits an unstoppable force? That is what we're going to talk about next. Don't go anywhere. The Ben Mulroney Show on the Chorus Radio Network marches on. Thanks so much for watching the show. Now, if you enjoyed what you saw, hit that subscribe button so you never miss another episode of the Ben Mulroney Show.